When you define a challenge of practice, the challenge of practice that you define, as in we're doing the best we can, it's not getting us where we need to go, how do I, because I don't know what to do, right? Most of those are not what we call algorithmic. Now, in behavioral science, we make a distinction between tasks that are algorithmic and tasks that are heuristic, spelt with an H, right? Algorithmic tasks are ones that allow you to follow a set of established instructions down a single pathway to one conclusion. Like when Mary Jean was talking this morning about silver bullets. The algorithms are the silver bullets. They're the formulas. They're the recipes. If there's an algorithm, take it. Do it. Don't invest your hard-fought, hard-earned professional learning effort in things that can be solved with algorithms. You need an on-call process in your school, there's an algorithm for it. Don't spend your time spending 3 weeks figuring one out, okay? Very important. Now, heuristics require that you experiment with possibilities and devise novel solutions because no algorithm exists. It requires that you learn. They require that you inquire. And the cognitive biases will fight you every step of the way on these ones. But these are the ones where learning really matters. Now, almost everything that you're going to put forward, because the stuff you work on is so hard, there is no algorithm for those things. They are all heuristic for the most part. So part of what you have to understand is because they're heuristic, it's not that someone's deciding to keep the algorithm from you. My students always say to me, surely there's some smart person or group of people who figured out if you just do these 10 things, kids will learn. Why can't you just tell us? And I'm like, trust me, I'm not keeping it from you to be cruel. It doesn't exist. Do you know why assessment for learning is so hard? Because assessment for learning requires that what you do next depends on what you know about them. Some of you will remember when we used to have a curriculum framed in the language of teaching objectives. Remember that? That was fantastic, which I say completely facetiously. Why? Because all you had to do was teach the objectives. You could swear an oath that you had taught the objectives. You could cover the curriculum and teach the objectives. And you know what was great? Nobody asked you if anyone learned anything. You could honestly put in a hard day's work teaching the objectives, and you could have an empty classroom. All you had to do was teach the objectives. Then, of course, we eventually realized, hang on a second, we're not in the business just to teach the objectives. So we shifted to a language of learning outcomes. And what happened when we shifted to a language of learning outcomes? We said, it doesn't really matter what you teach. It matters what they learn. So I started to even say to my students, don't say teaching and learning anymore. I said, I want you to say learning and teaching. Learning first, then the teaching is the response. But now we've abdicated a lot of control. Because it used to be easy to say we taught the objectives. Now we have to say what's the evidence of learning outcomes. And that's why assessment for learning is so hard. Assessment for learning is so hard because it says what I do depends on the learning need. Assessment for learning would be easy if it was just stuff we had to do in a vacuum. Didn't matter if it was an empty room, a room with 5 kids, 10 kids, same kids, different kids. We just teach, and learning follows. We always used to think, right? I teach, they learn. It's easy. And that's what I explain to my students. And so part of it, within understanding these heuristic pieces, are learning how to experiment with possibilities where you require novelty. But that's what a true learning culture should do for you. But I don't want you to start to approach the strategies like tools in the absence of demand. The key is to understand the nature of the challenge so that you can then select the appropriate strategy for intentional interruption. And some of the ones that you'll see there, and there's all kinds of examples, involve when and how you use protocols. See, now protocols, I don't want you to say, we should use protocols. Why? Because sometimes we use protocols and they're not a good idea. Protocols are good where they force us to do things we otherwise wouldn't naturally do. And protocols are good when we realize that fidelity to the protocol isn't our goal. That unless we see whether or not the protocol is doing what it's supposed to, it's not worthwhile. So using protocols, making preconceptions explicit, ensuring that activities are rooted in problems of practice. And problems of practice are really important. Recruiting contradictory evidence, because if we don't intentionally recruit contradictory evidence from other people, okay, then we will just confirm what we always think, believe, know, and do already anyway. The way we can learn to view mistakes as learning opportunities, I like to think about the word mistake as I like to put a dash between the S and the T. I like to think about it as a mistake. Like, you know, take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, take 27, you know? And you know how you know when the director calls cut and calls for a new take? What do? You don't just say, let's have a new take for the sake of a new take. You say, in the last take, this is what went on, this is what didn't work, try this differently, take 27, okay? Encouraging the growth mindset, I won't say more about here because I don't have time. Ensuring that problems of practice or questions are so important. Why? I told you human beings are naturally curious. We are well designed to answer questions, not to do deep thinking. And the importance of autonomy in time and task is important for the elements of motivation.